Yes, hello everyone. Welcome back to another video here on Cluiche with me, Séamus Brady, your host. I'm joined by Matthew Hurley, the Gaelic Statsman. Matthew, it's 2025. We're into a brand new year, and would you believe it's now 4 years since we did our first collab together in terms of calendar years. Anyway, it was way back in 2021. 2024 is in the books. You have another year coming up in 2025. We have the two All-Ireland Senior Club Football semi-finals to preview this weekend. But how was your Christmas? How was your New Year? And what are you expecting from 2025?
Yeah, thanks for having me on again, Seamus. Yeah, I suppose expecting some good things in hurling for 2025. Like I'm expecting some rip-roaring encounters, and not just the championship but the league as well, and a few other competitions like Fitzgibbon Cup. It's going to be brilliant. Gaelic football, there's going to be change. There's going to be change with the new rules. Like even Scorpio, I seen actually a poll today. What style do they want to do the score? Do they want to do it the same as it always is, like 1-11 or something like that? Or do they want to do it 1-2-7, if you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's a very it's going to be very interesting in that. It's going to be interesting my top scorer stats as well. What we are going to structure this. It's going to be interesting this season, and it's going to be new to the whole lot of us. But what is a common opinion for all of us, I'm guessing, is Gaelic football is going to improve. It's got to improve with these new rules. We're going to see a lot more attacking play. We're going to see a lot more brilliant score taking. So it's going to be very exciting, but very new at the same time for Gaelic football. And yeah, in terms of the fact that it's been 4 calendar years since me and you did a collab. It's been 5 years, I think, since I was on Aaron's channel as well. Like, that's absolutely incredible in its own right. Coincidentally, like I've done college now. The college is done for 2024. I'm in a main job now, so it's all changed. If we've come from a low base, Seamus, but look at where we are now. It's brilliant, and yeah, looking forward to the whole year in Gaelic games, starting off with the club season. Well, we're in the middle of we talk about new year, new systems and all that. It's the same club season. We're still in the same club season. We tend to forget that, but with the semi-finals of the football and the final of the hurling in the next few weeks, a lot of things to be looking forward to in January.
Certainly, man. I'm buzzing for this year. I think when we look at kind of the work that both of us have started doing, I think it was definitely difficult around August, September to nail down a permanent schedule with, the new work that you had on your plate, the new work that I had on my plate. Aaron as well. I don't know if anybody knows this, but Aaron's laptop seemed to go through hell on earth over that period as well. So definitely, but looking forward to 2025. And the bottom line is, man, we kept the content coming, and I'm looking forward to what 2025 has to offer as well. And getting the episodes every week out for you guys as well, a weekend preview and a weekend review. So if you've been here before, you know the score. Drop in whatever comments you have throughout the episode. Let us know what you're thinking about the games. Do you think Errigal are going to beat Crokes? Crokes beat Errigal? Coolera-Strandhill? Who do you think is going to be in the All-Ireland Club Football final? And what are the personal things you're looking forward to this weekend? Or any questions in general? Nothing's off the table, as long as it's not too personal. And then on top of that, also, you're not allowed to ask me how I feel about Dublin players retiring, because I've cried already a million times over it. So it's all good now. It's a new year, positive start. That's part of the past. Anyway, we're going to jump in with the games. Starting off with, I think, to be fair, what is probably the one that is more anticipated is the clash of the Ulster and Tyrone champions, Errigal Ciarán. They're taking on the Munster and Kerry champions in Dr. Crokes. And that one is on Sunday on TG Cahir. So, look, this game is massive. And I mean, the whole club championship in general, Matthew, from the very beginning has been characterised by expect the unexpected. You think that a team is going good, they go out pretty much in the next round or two. Glen beat Slotneil, had people convinced that they were, turned it around and they were going to be the Glen that they've been in the last couple of years. And they lost in the Derry final to Sean O'Leary Newbridge. Cuala beat Kilmacud Crokes in the Dublin final. They're the two most dominant gone over the last couple of years anyway. Both knocked out in their county championship final. Then you've had Pádraig Pearse's looking sensational, beaten by Coolera. You've had Castlehaven looking solid, beaten by Dr. Crokes. You've had Kilcoo looking fantastic, beaten by Errigal Ciarán. So we've ended up now with a final 4 teams, though, none of which have been here in the last 5 years. That's good for the club championship, first of all.
It is, and I suppose out of the 4 semi-finalists, only Dr. Crokes have won the All-Ireland, and only Dr. Crokes have done reasonably well at the club championship over the last few seasons. Yes, they haven't reached the same height as when they had Colin Cooper or Fionn Fitzgerald is still there, but Fionn Fitzgerald in his pomp. But yeah, it's still a shot at Dr. Crokes in a way are here, because when you look at the whole landscape of the Kerry Championship, East Kerry were dominating it. Even over Dingle, a very good Dingle team last season. East Kerry still won the championship, and like it had that sort of enigma that the divisional sides were always going to trump in Kerry, and Dr. Crokes have proved everyone wrong, really. They won the league, they won the club in Kerry, they won the county championship, they beat Castlehaven in the Munster Championship, who looked very, very good in the club championship last year, Castlehaven, and just didn't turn up on the day in Lewis Road, but Crokes were absolutely brilliant that day, and you have to take your hat off to them. And as for Errigal Ciarán, not just the club itself in Errigal, but the Tyrone Championship overall has been seen as an entertaining championship for the spectators. It's probably one of the best club championships to look at in terms of shocks, in terms of entertaining games and things like that in the club championship, but it's never really got a club to go on a run in the Ulster Championship. Only Errigal themselves have won the Ulster Championship from Tyrone. So the Tyrone Championship needed a boost, needed a kick up the backside. And I think Errigal Ciarán have definitely provided that. There's no doubt about it. When you look at the Ulster Championship, their run to the All-Ireland semi-final, like the game against St. Eunice, that was the only game where they looked probably unconvincing. Carrigan, they absolutely smashed in Corrigan Park in the quarter-final. In the semi-final, they beat Conair in a very good game, to be fair. And then Kilcoo, they beat them in the final. A Kilcoo team that, as you said, Séamus, they were looking very, very good going to that Ulster final, and Errigal stopped them in their track after that. So, but at the same time, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Errigal in this game, because a lot of people, I would say, it's not ignorance, I would say, but maybe a few people have been disrespectful, really, to Munster football over the last year or so. Like I've seen some tweets saying that who would win every championship, let's just say Leinster, Kilmacud, Connacht, Padre Pierce's, Ulster, Kilcoo, Munster. I've seen actually a tweet say irrelevant. That's what everybody has said about Munster football over the last year or so. And I was saying maybe Castlehaven will have something to say about that. Obviously, Castlehaven went out. But Dr. Crokes have a lot of people to prove wrong here, because a lot of people who think Munster club football is in the dirt, it is dead, and Ulster football is well clear of that. There is pressure on Errigal Ciarán to provide the goods. I do think ultimately Errigal will win the game, but maybe there is an ounce of pressure on Errigal, given the amount of kind of coverage on social media about Munster football over the last year or so.
Well, it is, because I do think when you look over the course of the year, Ulster teams have been winning more or less every competition this season. Like you had Derry starting off the year, Waddy Glen winning the club championship, Derry winning the National League. Then you had the Ulster Championship itself in the All-Ireland Series was a fantastic provincial championship, definitely way better than the Leinster one, than the Munster one. And then obviously you had the FRC, the Interprovincial Games. Ulster won that competition. Armagh won the All-Ireland. Like there's a lot of things that was going the direction of Ulster football. Even Armagh on the LGFA side winning the league. Like there was a lot that happened that was seen as massive steps forward for Ulster football. The one thing that Ulster definitely has over every other province is the competition between the teams. When Ulster teams see another team doing well, it's like they all get their backs up about it. Like I guarantee Armagh will have a tough time in Ulster next year. I'm basing that off history. Anytime Tyrone won the All-Ireland in the mid-2000s, they usually got a pasting in Ulster off somebody immediately after, whether it was in the McKenna Cup or whether it was in the league or whether it was actually in the Ulster Championship itself. But because they're such rivals, the fact that Armagh have won the All-Ireland will rile Tyrone up. It will rile Donegal up. And they'll look at them and think, we can win the All-Ireland if they won it. And they'll want to get their hands on Armagh as soon as they can. Whereas in Leinster especially, that hasn't happened over the last decade. Dublin have completely shattered teams before the ball has even been thrown in. Like teams have been beaten before the game has even begun. But that's a past debate. lapping it all back to Errigal Ciarán, is that in every competition, Ulster teams now are under pressure to back up the narrative around, because they're being held to a little bit of a higher standard now. Is that fair to say? Like, people are building the narrative that, oh, the Ulster teams are winning everything this year, from the college to the county to the club
to schools.
To the schools. Yeah. So for Errigal now, is there that bit of added pressure to kind of almost complete the lot that, you know, they could win the club championship and Ulster football continues to dominate?
Maybe so. And I think at the outset, no spoilers intended now, but do think Errigal Ciarán are the favourites for the All-Ireland right now in football. I do think when you look at how they've got to this stage in the semi-final, like you look at their road to the final, yes, Tyrone at times was very, very tough for them. Pomeroy, they only beat by 3 points. Clonard, they needed a replay to beat them. Clonard rallies. They beat Killyclogher by a point. They beat Trinnick by a point in the final. Like, that was a tough championship to overcome in Tyrone. Then they beat Union's by 2 points. And to be honest, Union's were much more, probably the better team in that preliminary Ulster game, if anybody watched that game back at RT back a while back. But then for the Carrigan game, they absolutely smashed them in the quarterfinal. And that was a Carrigan team that, remember, Watty Graham's then going to Carrigan last year, and they absolutely struggled. And Watty Graham's then went on and won the All-Ireland. So that tells you this Errigal team are very, very serious. There's no doubt about it. Clonard, like a good win in the semi-final, spearheaded obviously by Rory Canavan, scoring 9 points that day. And then Kilcoo, they beat them in the final. Like, when you look at that road to the semi-final, that is a very, very tough route. And that is tougher in many ways to Dr. Crokes' route to the semi-final. Yes, Dr. Crokes had decent games enough themselves, but their toughest encounter really, when you look at it from a mathematical point of view, was against Rathgarbuck in the Munster semi-final, which they won by a point. And Dr. Crokes were horrendous that day. They got out of jail. They really got out of jail. And that tells you, in general, if Dr. Crokes performed to their utmost in Munster or Kerry, they were going to win the game comprehensively, enough more comprehensively, arguably, than Errigal Ciarán. It was only when they were underperforming that things started to look really, really sour in a way. But when you look at Errigal Ciarán, they performed brilliantly against Clonard, for example. They won that game by a point. They played brilliantly against Kilcoo. They won that game by a point. They played brilliantly against Trinnick. They won that game by a point. There's a trend here that there is tougher games that Errigal had to go through, and that will mean that they're battle hardened going to the semi-final rather than Dr. Crokes' run. And you would argue that might be the thing to push Errigal over the line in this particular semi-final. Will it be in the final? That remains to be seen if Errigal obviously get there. But looking at this semi-final in particular, I think the tie games will really suit Errigal going into this.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I think when you look at the 4 clubs that are left, I think all but one of them have had wars, like genuine, absolute dogfights. Like, the Coolera-Strandhill result was even more impressive because Pearses looked like they had the game wrapped up when Declan Kenny scored his penalty. That wasn't a case where Pearses weren't at the races at all. They still could have won that game, probably should have won that game. And then obviously Coolera managed to equalise with an absolute monster of a score from Kevin Banks. You look at all 3 of the teams other than Crokes, I think you can see clear battles. The Dublin final for Cuala was a real dogfight, and they showed serious composure. Because let's not forget, Conor Callaghan had been sent off. They were down to 14 men. Luke Ward scored the goal for Kilmacud. All of a sudden, we were level. Parnell Park was absolutely going crazy, and I thought Kilmacud are going to kick on and win this. And we'll be talking about how Cuala threw it away. But for them to find a second wind and find the winner was absolutely unbelievable. Gavin O'Reilly, good to see you back again, man. He has a wish for 2025. Please, Ulster, go easy on us. Let the other 23 counties win something this year. Yes, I would like to see somebody else winning something as well. I mean, they've had a sensational year, haven't they, as a province? But what we'll do now is go back to the Errigal versus Dr. Crokes game. So, taking a deep dive into this game, Matthew, through both of their journeys, we are talking about how Errigal probably have the more battle-hardened journey to this venue, to this stage of the competition. But my first question to you is, we all know that does matter, that you've had tougher games to get here, and that means that you're more used to the battle and everything. However, in this club championship, is there an argument that it matters less than it's ever mattered before? Because we've seen like Pearses took out Currafin, took out St. Bridget's. Coolera hadn't beaten anybody near the level of those two. Didn't matter. Going into the Connacht final, that's a once-off game. Coolera got the job done. Again, another example. Kilcoo against Errigal Ciarán. While yes, Errigal did beat good teams, very good teams to get to that Ulster final, I would argue that Kilcoo in beating, Scottstown, teams like that it was on paper a more impressive route for Kilcoo to get to that final. So my question back to you is there an argument that it actually doesn't mean as much as we would think?
You could say, and it's so coincidental, when you look at the other two All-Ireland semi-finalists, Cuala in the Leinster Championship came through a tough test in Naas and still won Leinster.
Mm-hmm.
They still came through Kilmacud and still won Leinster. Dr. Crokes came through what seemed to be a tough game going in paper into the game in Castlehaven. They came through that and they eased past a lot more Castellini in the final. There was no shot there. So you could look at it either one of two ways. You can look at it two ways. Like you look at the landscape of the club championship as well. Corfin came through, as far as I know, I think they came through Salton, not Nakara in the Galway championship, which would have been a tough game. They still won Galway. Castlehaven came through St. Finbarr's in Cork, still won the Cork championship. Trying to think, well, Dublin's not a good example because Kilmacud beat Naveen in the semi-final, which probably would have been a tougher test than Ballymun. Like Ballymun do have probably a better group of players than Naveen, but they're not battle hardened when it comes to knockout Ballymun, and they haven't been for years, to be honest with you. Trying to think now off the top of my head, other championships. Oh yeah, a big example actually. Roscommon, Padraig Pearse, they beat St. Bridget's. They knocked Bridget's out of the championship in Roscommon. Still won Roscommon. So. Yeah. But I see your point of view in the way that in Derry, for example, Watty Graham's Lane beat Slotney, but they lose to Newbridge. So I think it goes kind of one or two ways. It does. It's not it's not completely going one way. It's one way then the other.
Yeah, I think the point I was making was like, I just look at it and I say, I really don't think that we can take anything from the past and put it into this game and say this is going to impact how this game is going to go. Because the one thing that is very evident, yes, Dr. Crokes were here not that long ago, but there's a lot of fresh faces in that team who weren't on the team last time Crokes were here. And the players like Fionn Fitzgerald, like Gavin White, while they wouldn't have been the most important players last time, they are now. Like they are the most important players. So it's completely different. And for Errigal Ciarán, it's completely uncharted territory. We have a few comments coming in here, lads. Keep them coming. Love to see it. Gavin, he says, depends on how you look at it. Bridget's got to the final last year because they got tested in Roscommon and Connacht. But Pearses didn't win Connacht because they were unprepared for Strandhill, because Pearses' last test was Bridget's in the quarterfinals in Roscommon. I do agree. I think if you look at the Currafin game, I was staggered at how off the pace Currafin were in that game and how easy it was for Pearses. And then Liam Y Football Vlogs here says, how remarkable is it that only one club remaining in the championship in both codes have actually won an All-Ireland? That is absolutely bonkers, isn't it?
And as well, Liam is a very, very good guy. He was on my podcast recently as well. So hello to Liam there. But a great Offaly man as well. What is another thing as well in both codes? Only one has reached an All-Ireland final. Dr. Crokes. Navina and Sarsfields have never been to an All-Ireland final before either. And none of the three others in Errigal, Ciarán, Coolera or Cuala have been to an All-Ireland final. So not just to win it, but to be in an All-Ireland final, only one of them is done, and that's Crokes. It's unreal. It really is. That can only be good for the game, Séamus. It can be. It's brilliant to see.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, that's the best thing that can happen to the championship. When dynasties get broken, it's the best thing that can happen. And like the most important results in the last decade, if you're talking across the sport, is definitely Dublin losing to Mayo in 2021 was really important because it broke the stranglehold that Dublin had over Gaelic football, and they weren't even playing attractive football in 2021. So if they had kept winning the All-Ireland, it would have been even more demoralising for everybody. Limerick losing to Cork in the hurling championship shook it up because it showed that actually you could beat them. It showed how high the level was that you had to get to beat them, but it showed that it was possible, and it showed that, you know, you would be capable of doing that if you were able to get to the level that Cork were. But yeah, I think my point about it is this club championship throughout the entire season, the one thing that has been consistent is everything that you feel like you know about the teams coming into the game doesn't seem to matter. I was so sold on Pádraig Pearse's. I was like, yep, absolutely. You smashed Curfin. You beat Bridget's, who got to the final last year and went toe-to-toe with Glen. I'm sold. You're definitely going to get at least to the All-Ireland semi-final, and then I'd back you to be able to go all the way. And then they lose the very next game to Coolera-Strandhill. Kilcoo annihilate Scottstown. And Scottstown on paper have as good a club team as anybody. Like the Hugheses, Jack McCarron, Rory Began. And then they annihilated them, and then they lose the next game. So my point is no matter how good Errigal looked, or no matter how good Dr. Crokes looked, the one thing we've been told time and time again in this club championship is don't get ahead of yourself, thinking that now you know who's going to win. I think we'll know only for sure when the game is finished who's going to be the winner of this. But looking into it, if you had to take what we're taking now is very much an educated guess at what the game is going to go like. Errigal against Dr. Crokes. What do you think is an advantage, that Errigal have, and then what do you think is an advantage that Dr. Crokes have going into the semi-final?
This is such a weird thing I'm going to say here because it's so against the norm. But Errigal Ciarán's attack is so good, and Dr. Crokes' defence is so good. You see what I did there? The Ulster football is the attacking one, and the Munster football side are the defensive one.
2025 new year, man.
But this, I have methods to my madness here, Séamus. You look at Dr. Crokes' run to the final. From the Kerry semi-final up until the Munster final, Dr. Crokes conceded one goal from play. And that was against Lockmore Castleiney when the game was gone. The game didn't matter at that point. They only conceded one other goal, and that was a penalty to Damien Callahan of Castlehaven. That's an unreal record. They've played sides there like St. Brendan's Board, Dingle, Castlehaven, and Lockmore Castleiney. And to only concede one goal from play combined is really, really good. And they have a very, very sturdy defence as well. They conceded an average of 1-8 per game from play. Like, that is a really, really good average to have. Errigal Ciarán's attack is really, 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 really elusive, I would say. In points scored more than goals scored, because coincidentally, goals scored, they've only scored 4 goals across the championship in Tyrone and Ulster, which, and having looked into it, that is such a shock in its own right. They only scored 2 goals against Clonmel, 1 goal against Killyclogher, and then 1 goal against Kilcoo, the Joe Cole the Goose goal in the Ulster final. Those were the only 4 goals they scored across Ulster and Tyrone, but they scored a lot of points. Rory and Darragh Canavan had 55 points between them in the Ulster and Tyrone championship combined. Or Robinson has 7. Peter Hart has 7 points from play and is really, really excelling in this championship. Joe Goose is chipping in. Tommy Canavan off the bench. Ben McDonald. Peter McCartan, obviously. Aidan McCrory even chipped in with a pop from full back. They are really, really strong there. And coincidentally as well, their defence, Errigal Ciarán, I would think Dr. Crokes, this might be an angle for Dr. Crokes to get at this Errigal team. Their defence isn't that good because you look at the averages anyway. Overall, they've conceded 8 goals, Errigal Ciarán, and they've scored 4, which is, I haven't looked at that stat even more. That is mind-boggling. They conceded 7 goals in the Tyrone championship overall out of their 8, which might indicate that they underperformed a bit in the Tyrone championship. And then the Ulster Championship, they may have tightened the defence a little bit and things like that. They only conceded 1 goal in their last 4 games, and that was against Clontarf in the semi-final in Ulster. So we'll have to see how Errigal do tighten up their defence in many ways. But I think Dr. Crokes are very, very reliant on 2 men in particular when you look at their scores. Tony Brosnan, who scored 4 goals and 39 points, and Micheál Burns, who scored 25 points. Mm-hmm. If Errigal Ciarán stopped the 2 of them, it's going to be very, very hard to see how Dr. Crokes get over this semi-final, because you look at the other scores. David Shaw, okay, he's a full forward, he scored 1-9 from play, but their next top scorer after David Shaw then is Kieran O'Leary, the guy who's nearing 40, a guy who was plenty All-Irelands for Kerry. He scored 1-7 of Dr. Crokes total. So, and that's off the bench mostly. Like, that is a lot for a player to have at, Kieran's experience position in the Dr. Crokes team. Like, you even look at some of their forwards there. Cian McMahon is usually starting corner forward for them, but he's only scored 2 points across the Kerry Senior Football Championship and the Munster Championship. So you have to. Dr. Crokes need more men to stand up other than Tony Brosnan and Micheál Burns, because, like, if Errigal Ciarán, for example, put, I don't know, Cormac Quinn on one of them two, and then the other guy is picked up by Aidan McCrory, just for argument's sake, they could be in a bit of bother. So I think Dr. Crokes need more men to step up for them to have a chance in this one. And I think if Dr. Crokes keep to their same defensive principles in this game, I think they'll give Errigal a really, really good rattle. But we could see a game, and I hate to say this, Séamus, new year, new agenda and all that, but look at the stats and everything. Dr. Crokes only conceded 1 goal from play. They're only relying on a few forwards. I think it could be, if Dr. Crokes are aiming to pull off a massive shock here, it could be a game that's tough to watch on the eye, which I don't like saying, but it could be.
I think out of the 4 teams that are left, I think if you take the handbrake off all 4 of them, Errigal Ciarán have, by far, in my opinion, the most threatening forward line out of any of the 4 clubs that are left. I think you look at the Canavan brothers, Peter Hart, like, that's just a sensational forward line for any club team to have. And then the threats that they have coming forward, like Peter McCartan, like Joe Goose, who got the goal against Kilcoo in the last day. Like, they just have a sensational amount of options throughout the team. And I feel like if it turns into a really free-flowing, open game of football, it is Errigal's to lose. Now, we have a comment in here from Johnny Barrett, and I looked this up as you were talking there, Matthew. I couldn't find anything on it. But Johnny, you said Aidan O'Shea has announced his retirement from Mayo today. He's followed up saying, great servant to Mayo football. Hope he enjoys his retirement. Adios, Aidan. Great player. Now, I just looked it up there on Twitter. I couldn't find anything that was an article or a statement by Aidan. But yeah, Johnny, if you could let me know where you found it. Did you find it on Twitter? Did you find it on Instagram? Anything like that? And then if we get it confirmed, we'll 100% discuss it, because I mean, what a servant Aidan O'Shea has been for Mayo up until this point. But going back in to answer my own question on the Dr. Crokes versus Errigal Ciarán, the strengths and the weaknesses, I do completely agree with you. I think the better defence is Dr. Crokes's. You look at the spine that they have between Sean Fitzgerald and Gavin White. But then I think the better attack is Errigal Ciarán's attack. I personally am going to go for Errigal to squeeze through this game narrowly. I'm saying 2 or 3 points. I think that there will be stages where Dr. Crokes will look like they're kicking into gear. I can see Tony Brosnan going on a bit of a hot streak. But I think Errigal, just as they found their way through previous games, like against Kilcoo, against Clonairon, they've found winners. Like, even you go back through the club championship, like Peter Hart kicking an absolute monster for them in the Tyrone championship, which got them over one of the games in the club championship. They got a late winner as well against Clonairon. They got a late winner against Kilcoo. Like, when it goes down the home stretch, Errigal have proven this season time and time again that they don't rattle, they don't get worried. And I would look at Dr. Crokes and be like, they just looked too vulnerable against Rathcormac in that game. They just looked too vulnerable, in my opinion. And I was saying, if you're in the Ulster Club Championship, if you're in the Connacht Club Championship, you would have been eliminated with a performance like that. So, personally, I'm going to go with Errigal narrowly. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'll probably go for Errigal just slightly as well. And the only reason I say that is because Errigal have more threats than Dr. Crokes. I don't think that's an unpopular thing to say. Dr. Crokes, if Tony Brosnan and Micheál Burns are stopped, it's going to be very difficult to see how Dr. Crokes get through this game in general, because you look at the Munster final in the first half. They were trying to see what Lockmore Castleknock were like in the first half, and they struggled at periods in that opening half. And then when you realise Lockmore didn't have much up front, and they didn't have much in the team, they didn't have much in the legs, Dr. Crokes then started to crank up the gears. I'm wondering what will happen in that sort of situation at half time against this Errigal team. Because Errigal are, no disrespect, the greatest respect now, Errigal are miles ahead of Lockmore Castleknock when you look at quality.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Dr. Crokes could struggle when you look at it from that angle as well. So I feel like Errigal will get over the line. And I look at the stats anyway, I don't think they'll score a goal either as well. So it's going to be a very, very interesting game, no doubt about it. Like, Errigal don't score much goals. They've only scored 4 in this championship. It'll be, if they could score one, I will say this, if Errigal could score at least one goal on Sunday, they'll win the game.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see what happens. But I'm going to tip Errigal as well, slightly narrowly.
If you had to predict the score, I think I'd go something like Errigal 12, Dr. Crokes 10.
Yeah, something like that. Maybe. Yeah, I'll probably go.
2-point margin.
11-9.
Yeah, something around that. Something narrow. I think a halftime, I think it will be a low score and draw at halftime. I think it will be like 4 points each at halftime, and it will open up a bit in the second half. And I think Errigal will just get that little bit of breathing room between the two of them. Gavin O'Reilly here with a good comment. He says, was excited for the games, but forgot that this will still be the old rules. Probably will be defensive. Yep, unfortunately, we have a couple more to get through before Jim Gavin saves the day. For anybody that doesn't know, I used to be a tour guide in Croke Park doing tours around the stadium. And I was just thinking the other day, when I did it, it was so simple. You could tell people from all around the world. You could basically put football and hurling together. You could be like, look, these are the basic rules for the two sports. You know, it's 1 point for a point, 3 points for a goal. You know, now it's like, no, now you have to split them up. Now you have to talk about football and go, well, it's 1 point if you kick it inside this 40-meter arc, which you can barely see, but it is there, especially if you go down to a club pitch. Good luck seeing it. But no, it's all only a bit of jokes. But genuinely, it is going to be a fascinating year for Gaelic football. The first club semi-final, which will be shown on TG Cahir on Sunday, and the game starts at 1:30, but coverage is, of course, starting at 1 o'clock, is the Sligo and Connacht champions Coolera-Strandhill going up against the Dublin and Leinster champions Cuala. Now, what's interesting now is Coolera are going into this still as massive underdogs. Like they're going in as massive underdogs. And they beat a fantastic Pádraig Pearse's team in the Connacht final. And deservedly so. They were with them every step of the way. Never gave up. Never let the heads drop. Even though a lot of things went against them. They're here now. They're on merit. They're here on merit. They're deserving Connacht champions. They're up against Cuala, who are the Dublin and Leinster champions. Cuala were massive underdogs in the Dublin final, but then, as what tends to happen when teams win the Dublin Championship, they were roaring favourites to then win the Leinster Championship as well. How do you think Cuala have handled, first of all, the favourites tag that they've had since beating Kilmacud in that Dublin final?
For the first part of that kind of mini spell, they handled it really well against Naas, beat them comprehensively. I know the game only ended a 3-point margin, but in that game, Cuala were much better than this, and they outclassed them in Newbridge that night. But then against Tullamore, Tullamore kicked that game away in Parnell Park, I remember. That was a game where Tullamore really could have won that game in the Leinster semi-final. And then against RD, they performed very well in the first half. And then the second half, RD could have won it. They could have won it. When you look at it from the cold light day, they could have snatched us in the last few minutes and won the game. Like, they could have scored a few more points. There was chances missed and things like that. And Cuala looked very, very comfortable midway through that second half. And then, boom, RD get 2 goals. And the game swung on its head. So it's hard kind of to judge. The first part, they looked very, very good. Then the second part, they looked pretty below average, Cuala. So it'd be interesting to see how they come up against this Coolera-Strandhill team. But about Coolera-Strandhill as well, again, and I'll repeat what you said, I'll stress this, deserving Connacht champions, deserving Sligo champions. They've been one of the stories of 2024, no doubt about it. But you look at their stats, and like, I don't want to burst the bubble now for Coolera before the semi-final, but Niall Murphy has scored 3 goals and 52 points of their total. The next best player, when you look at scores, is Mark McDaniel with 6 points.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if Cuala get one guy to follow Niall Murphy everywhere he goes, maybe double mark him.
Michael Fitzsimons, man.
Yeah.
It's
I
just
feel like
he's too good, man. He's too good as a man marker. I don't care. Like, you genuinely tell me, like, you definitely couldn't name, in my opinion, you definitely couldn't name 3 better man markers than Mick Fitz in terms of pedigree, who he's marked, when he's marked them. Like, you think back at the start and the consistency of the guy. You look back, like, the start of Mick Fitzsimons' career, he came into the Dublin team in 2010. And then 2011, just 1 year later, he's man-marking Colin Cooper in the 2011 All-Ireland final. And then you fast forward 12 years in his career, he's still the best man-marker for the job to mark David Clifford. There's 2 completely different, like, physical sizes as well. Like, Colin Cooper would have relied a lot more on the jinx and the pace and everything like that, and the brain. Like, Colin Cooper's IQ for the game was sensational. Clifford is like a prototype for a Gaelic footballer. He's the perfect height, he's the perfect build, and his left foot is probably the best left foot I've ever seen. Like, I definitely up there with Ciarán MacDonald from Mayo. I think would be another one that I always love, Ciarán MacDonald's left boot. But his consistency and his ability as a man marker is just absolutely extraordinary. So Coolera need to have a plan B. They need to have it pretty much understood. Like, Mick Fitzsimons is going to go on Niall Murphy, and other people are going to need to step up, because Niall Murphy is an outstanding forward for Coolera, and he is absolutely fantastic for Sligo. But he's being picked up by arguably the greatest man marker that the game has seen. So you're going to need to have other options. You're going to need to have people that can step up to the plate, because you can't rely on Niall Murphy to carry the team forward. And the reality is, that game against Pádraig Pearse's, for some reason, the game settled into this arm wrestle where it really was a gritty game. Who wanted it more type thing. I think Coolera definitely need to take it there, because I feel like Cuala have more flair players. I feel like Cuala have the Niall O'Callaghan's, the Luke Keatings, the Conor O'Brien's, who kicked that goal in the Leinster final against RD. Like, Cuala have a lot of players that can get their confidence up, get their tails up, and they can absolutely fly out the traps. And they also have Conor O'Callaghan. And they have the threats coming from deep with Peadar O'Cofaigh-Byrne and Peter Duffy from midfield. Like, Cuala are stacked. And they are going to be difficult to beat. And for years in Dublin, they were underachievers. For years in Dublin, they were a team that you looked at and thought, where the hell have they been? Come towards the end of the championship. They've really got it together over the last couple of years, and now that they're out of Dublin, they're out of the traps, and they've been unleashed on the rest of the country. They've been really, really good. Cuala are favourites for this. They have to be favourites for this. But Gavin comments in here saying 2 things. Cuala were very sloppy in Leinster, and Strandhill probably are written off again, just like against Pearse's and Ballina. And maybe in Sligo, they thrive on being written off. And like, I think when you look at that, most of the games they've gone into, especially since they got out of Sligo anyway, the 2 games that they've gone into against Ballina and Pearse's, they've been big underdogs. I actually said they'd beat Ballina, not because I'm some genius, but because I just never really rated Ballina that highly. But do you think that they're happy to be in that mindset again? I mean, I've seen articles come out with players discussing the mindset that they're in heading into this All-Ireland semi-final. Do you think that that's exactly where they want to be? Like, going into this game, would you rather be in the camp of Cuala, or would you rather be in the camp of Coolera, just from an expectations side of thing?
Probably Coolera. because nobody's expecting anything of them, and they could go out and enjoy an All-Ireland semi-final, which they've earned their right to be in. Whereas Cuala would be thinking to themselves, if we lose this, we won't be back here again. Because you look at the strength of the Dublin Championship, Kilmacud, I'm sure Ballymun will have to come up with some plan next year. Na Fianna, Ballymun and St. Enda's can't be as bad as they were this year. I feel like Cuala have to take their chance, and it is their first ever Dublin Championship in history. I feel like Cuala have to take their chance now. And if they don't take their chance now, they might not be back here again. And for Coolera, they have kind of a dynasty, a mini kind of dynasty in Sligo at the moment. Mm-hmm. So they could keep going up the gears in Sligo and keep get confidence going. So there is a slight chance that they'll be back here again and have a good crack off this game. So I feel like with Coolera, if the weight is off your shoulders, you then can play your best football. And that might not be the case with Cuala. So I feel like in that situation, Coolera are in a better position. But myself and Jason Keelan on my own show yesterday, the Gaelic Statsman podcast, discussed yesterday about this game in Cuala and Coolera and how Coolera are going to win this game. And we both kind of agreed, and we said grit and determination. And we were questioning ourselves, is that genuinely going to be enough to beat a Cuala team there on pop? No mistake about it. If Cuala are, let's just say, 60, 70% on it, Coolera-Strandhill have a huge chance. But if Cuala are 80% plus, I feel like Cuala will just either edge it or they'll win it by 5 or 6. I think that's going to be the way about this game, because I just cannot see Coolera providing enough threat when Niall Murphy scored 50% of their scores, and add to that as well, he scored 322 from play. When you look at the next best score at 6 points, you look at Cuala scores. Like when you take Niall Murphy out of the Coolera-Strandhill scoring chart, the amount of Cuala players that have scored more than Coolera-Strandhill players, the amount is 7. Or sorry, not 7, 8. 8 players. Including the likes of Conor O'Callaghan, Niall O'Callaghan, Luke Keating, Peter Duffy's in that list, Conor O'Brien's in that list, Charlie McMorrow, the centre-back, is in that list as well. Paddy O'Coffey-Burns not even on the list.
Yeah.
And that's another player. So I feel like Coolera just don't, and I hate to say this, I love Coolera for what they've done in the Connacht Championship, and I'd love to put up a test on Sunday. But I feel like they just don't have enough threats to deal with this Cuala team.
Yeah, I definitely think you've articulated it very, very well. The one thing that I would notice that definitely would cause issues for Cuala is when you look at throughout the championship, Cuala have tended to drop off in the final few moments. Like they dropped off going down the home stretch against St. Mary's RD, and they made it quite dramatic. I know that they found the winner, but by God, they really made it difficult for themselves. Then you look at as well, Naas, like that game, they had that game in the bag, and then Naas, got that amazing goal from Alex Byrne, roared back into the contest. Like they've tended to kind of make it more difficult for themselves going down the home stretch. And you look at when Coolera roared back into the game against Pearses, it was going down the home stretch. They found those equalisers. Niall Murphy hit an amazing point, and then Kevin Banks' boomer sent it to extra time. And then in extra time, Coolera just had the bit between their teeth, got the early goal. And that was imperative in them pushing on. Look, in this game, there's no doubt Cuala are the favourites. I think that there's no way that they underestimate Coolera-Strandhill the same way that Pádraig Pearse has underestimated them. And I'm not saying that Pearse has underestimated Coolera from the start. I don't think that they did underestimate them from the start. But I think when Declan Kenny scored the penalty and they went 4 points up and there was, only a quarter of the game left to go, I think at that point, I think Pearses were like, okay, we've got this. And I think once Kevin Banks hit an absolute worldie of a point, I think that was when they were like found it very hard to snap back into we're in a game here. This is like, these lads aren't going away. And Coolera at that point, when Murphy had got had put them one closer, and then Banks had equalised, I think Coolera fully believed at that point that, okay, we can beat these, and they kicked on. When you said there about, Cuala might not get back here, it sounds dramatic, but it's not. It really isn't. You look at the Ballymun Kickham's example. You go back to 2012, 2013, when Ballymun broke through and they won their first Dublin Championship with that crop. And they had a young James McCarthy, John Small, who was still a Dublin minor. They had Dean Rock. They had Philly McMahon. They had Sean George. They had an absolutely incredible team. They had Ted Furman as well, David Byrne. And yet, it took them 8 years to win the Dublin Championship again. 8 years. It took them 8 years to get back out of the Dublin Championship, because the Dublin Championship is so damn competitive. So for Cuala, they're here now. You've no idea when you're going to be back here again. They have to make this count. I think Cuala will make it more difficult for themselves than it will need to be. I think that they'll be in a relatively decent position at halftime. I think they'll be leading by 3 points at the interval. I think that they'll potentially give away a sloppy goal, and then it will be very dramatic, and I think Cuala will find a winner. I would be tempted to say something like Cuala 14 points, Coolera 110. Something like that. What are you thinking?
Interesting you say Cuala will score no goal, because Coolera have been very strong at the back when you look at conceding goals. They've only conceded 4 goals in 5 games, or 9 games, should I say, across the Sligo Championship and the Connacht Championship. They only conceded goals to
penalty as well.
Yeah. So they've only conceded 3 goals from play. Shamrock Gales, St. Mary's, and St. Malaise Gales. So I feel like their defence is very, very strong, and they have known Coolera to bring this game down to a defensive fight, I would say. They didn't do that against Park Pierce's, and they were praised for playing good football that day. But before that, against Ballinasstephenites, it was 9 points apiece after 80 minutes of football. So I feel like if Coolera are to have any chance, they'd have to bring the same performance as they performed against Ballinasstephenites into this game. I know people might say bring the same performance in from the Porter Pierce's game, but I'm telling you, if you make this into a score fest, I think Cuala could rack up a load in this. You have Niall O'Callaghan up there, you've Conor O'Callaghan, you've Luke Keating in the form of his life at the moment, you've Conor O'Brien, who scored a lot, including the goal against Ardee in the Leinster final. You have a lot of players there that could cause damage. I think Coolera need to keep the score down in this one to have any chance. I think they will. I think they will provide that tactic. Will that be enough though? I just feel like, and I go back to my previous point, I just don't think they'll have enough other than Niall Murphy in terms of forwards to get over the line. And for that reason, I'm going to go Cuala to win this by 10 points to 7.
Okay, my goodness, I thought before you said 7 points, I thought you were finishing it out by being like Cuala by 10 points. I was like, sorry, what? But yeah, 10 points to 7 sounds a little bit more realistic. Gavin says, my brain says Cuala, my gut says a Coolera comeback. Interesting. Gavin, which one would you back if you were putting a bet on? I think that's the biggest question. Would you back your brain if you're putting a bet on, or would you back your gut if you're putting a bet on? Yeah. And then if you were to give, who do you think will be player of the weekend before we wrap it up? Who do you think will be the standout man from the weekend?
I think if you go down to the intermediate All-Ireland, I think from Crossmalloy to Dean Rovers from Mayo, Jordan Flynn, I think he'll have a big performance for them against Cara in their All-Ireland intermediate semi-final. Definitely worth a shout out there. But in terms of the senior, I would think Niall O'Callaghan from Cuala.
Good shout. I'm going to go with a bit more of a rogue one. I'm going to go with Cormac Quinn if he picks up Tony Brosnan. I think that could have a big say and a big factor in Errigal Ciarán getting over the line in that game, because I think that one will be more of a not the purest game of football, and I think Errigal will edge over the line in defensive football will be very important in getting over the line in that game. But it is great to be back. We are locked in for another year here on Cluiche. Do join us. If you are new, please do hit the subscribe button, everything like that. Join in as well. Liam White has a very good suggestion. Actually, I might be tempted to go with this one. Michael Fitzsimons. Because obviously we know who he's going to pick up. He's going to pick up Niall Murphy. And if he can take Niall Murphy out of the game, Cuala are halfway there pretty much already. So, yeah, that is the weekend previewed here on Cluiche. Errigal Ciarán versus Dr. Crokes obviously is the second game of the day. And Coolera versus Coolera-Strandhill kicks off the action. It's a double header on TG Cahir on Sunday. Make sure that you tune in for that. That's the weekend preview, guys. Big thank you to Matthew for jumping on for another episode. Make sure to have a look at all his content there. His handle is underneath his name at Gaelic Statsman. And then we have Gavin O'Reilly, Liam White Football Vlogs, Johnny Barrett. Thank you all so much for getting involved in the comment section as well. Love to see it. That's the episode finished, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back on Sunday evening with a weekend review at 8 o'clock. So make sure to join us then, where I'll hopefully be able to finish the sentence. Until the next one, guys, take care.